Anonymous, they've declared war on Russia. This sort of hybrid war of multiple enemies rather than just an enemy that you can point a tank at. Yeah, Vladimir Putin is, as a caller just expressed moments ago, he might have bitten off more than he can chew. 0345 6060 973. Cricklewood. Hello, Gillian.
Hello there.
Gillian.
Hi. I blame NATO for this. The Ukrainians knew that they were under threat and they applied to join NATO, and NATO was too afraid of the big Russian bogeyman, so they wouldn't let them in. And now look. And all this wringing of hands and, we stand with Ukraine. Well, you could have saved Ukraine by letting them into NATO. Putin wouldn't have bothered to touch Ukraine if they had let them into NATO.
Well, I'm not sure that that's actually a correct reading of the situation, but okay. But what now, though?
What now? While Europe has been sleeping, Putin has been planning. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes after other countries now that are not in NATO.
Yeah, well, he's already threatened Sweden and Finland that they shouldn't think about joining NATO. Not that I think that previous to his advance into Ukraine, they were thinking of it. But what is ironic, I mean, I've said it before, is that by doing this, he's actually brought NATO a much stronger and more united NATO to his borders. All right, thanks, Gillian. 0345 6060 973. Aberystwyth. Hello, Rosanna.
Hi. I have a bit of an issue with, generally the situation with the disparity in treatment between Ukrainian refugees and other displaced people. Now, I don't begrudge Ukrainian refugees the help. I want them to be helped. I want all people to be helped to the same standard, and the standard is quantifiably different because Poland, a country that is erecting the largest border wall on the European continent, which scientists say is a environmental disaster because it's so big, they say they will take up to 1 million Ukrainian refugees. Now, they never call displaced people refugees, for starters. Now, what's the difference? They're white. You know, that's an issue. And also, I need to correct an earlier caller of yours. He may well be from a think tank. It's probably one that the funding's not declared. But there is no safe route from Calais to the UK. And that is the issue when we're talking about channel crossings. You can't then point at resettlement schemes that start from other countries, which, yes, we have up to, I think, 20 of them around the world. But unlike most countries in the world, we don't allow people to apply at the border. And because we happen to be an island, we just don't do that. We say we hold out the right for asylum, but we will criminalize you for coming to get that right. It's atrocious, and I think that it needs to be pointed out. Obviously, there's so much to talk about the Ukrainians' situation and Russia's actions. And, I have thoughts on that too, but it cannot go without saying that the rhetorical treatment and the proposed material help offered to Ukrainian refugees is different. And if you ask what is different about them, they are white.
Just going back to what you said about Calais, I don't recall somebody on this programme saying that there was a safe route from Calais. I mean, what the government...
They said that generally there were safe routes without mentioning the fact, and they talk about channel crossings as an issue. They mention generally that there are safe routes, but don't mention that there is no safe route from Calais. I think that's a problem. I frankly don't know how you conduct a responsible conversation without making it very, very clear that there is no other way for them to come and obtain that right, which in the Refugee Convention is obtained by reaching the soil of that country, if not through a resettlement scheme.
Yeah, again, I don't recall anybody on this show saying that there was a safe route from Calais. What I do recall is that I specifically said on more than one occasion that this government is pushing through a bill which specifies that you can't, you must apply for asylum in another country. But by definition, if you apply for asylum in another country, then that would be a safe country, and you can't come here if you have first stepped foot in a safe country, which is the most perfect catch-22 that I think I've ever heard. Thanks for that, Rosanna. 0345 6060 973. Chris says, always remember a country is not... Oh, no, I've read that. Michael says, that EU army doesn't sound like such a bad idea these days. Yes. Croydon. Hello, Paul.
Oh, hello. How's it going?
Good, thanks.
Yeah. I love your show. It's a shame the first time I've spoken to you is in such circumstances. But I just had this like a philosophical thought. I was listening to one of your sister or rival radio stations, and they spoke to a professor who was in Ukraine, and she spoke she said what she wanted to say, and she at the end she said, "Can I just say, guys, just take care of the sky, and we'll take care of the ground. No fly zone, etc." And the presenter said, "Look, we can't do that." We reminded her we can't do that because it might start World War III, etc., what Putin has been saying. And she said, "Look, I just want to say it anyway." And it made me think, just putting myself in their shoes, I wonder if I wonder if there's some sort of thought that freedom in the West is now closed. And it's reminded me of the world order we had before of, wars, Iraq, USA, our security, which we don't always agree of, but that's our security. It wasn't just about wars. I feel it was also about the way our media portrays certain things, our films, like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Harrison Ford in Air Force One. Do you know what I mean? Like even our, James Bond franchise, where we come to the rescue. Eventually, we come to the rescue. Whether it's 7 seconds to go or not, the bomb is averted. It's averted, and we save the day. And it's just not true, is it? Because this is reality. Reality is the mad doctrine. Putin's obviously veered off course, and we are where we are. We can't literally do anything, and we can't do anything because it wouldn't. If we take him by his word or take him by his bluff, it could cause that, what's it called? Mutual assured destruction?
Yeah.
Is it? Mad doctrine?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's just I hope it's not insensitive or anything. It was just sort of like a thought I had when the way she was pleading. It just made me think.
Right, so we've become sort of inured to reality. We think that we are going to be saved at the last possible moment by a hero in a dinner jacket and a bow tie.
Yeah, well, more. That's why I said I hope it's not insensitive. But I'm thinking more the guys in. Look, you got Ukraine. I thought Putin was going to stop with those. Is it Donbass and the other place? I thought he was going to stop with those regions because there's, whether it's true or not, it does appear, or if it's 100% or not, it does appear at least 50% of those regions want to be with Russia. I mean, it's next to Russia. I mean, it's not inconceivable, right? And then another 50% want to be with the West, and then the rest of the country is literally in the West. Ukraine, democratically run country. They've got a president, Zelensky, etc., etc. But it's not. I don't think it's just about. We have to take into account. It's not just about education and jobs and wanting to live free, inverted commas, in the West. It's also what's been fed them, which is our films, our culture. And part of our films and culture has been these type of films, like, but you know what I mean.
I do know what you mean. Yes, I understand what you're saying, but I don't think that's unique to us in the West. I think that Russian films also have this sort of mystical heroism about them. I think that's just the human condition, that we like to believe that good will win in the end, because in reality it often doesn't. Thanks, Paul. 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Email nick@lbc.co.uk. If you're on Twitter, It's at LBC. Nick texts, when all is said and done, Putin will have to be defeated militarily, with a small chance that he is brought down internally. All else is wishful thinking. Julian says, Ukrainians are fleeing their homes with nothing. Our governments may not be able to stop Putin, but we can and should open our doors to Ukrainian refugees. It's the right thing to do. What do you think? 0345 6060 973 LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC with Nick Abbott.
0345 excuse me again, 0345 6060 973 Southall, Manesh.
Hello, Nick. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Yeah, I just want to say this is a load of rubbish. The guy who had AJ, he's off his rockers. He's got no idea what's going on in the world. And look, we just have to play to the tune. We've got to look after each other. Where's the issue with that? I know so many Ukrainian people in this country that work hard and they're here to demonstrate to themselves that they can make a living, and they're doing it so well. And these are the people that we need to be welcoming. What's wrong with this government? What's wrong with Boris Johnson? What's wrong with people like AJ to knock these people down? I just don't get it. Honestly, tell me what I'm doing wrong.
Well, Boris Johnson owes his position in large part to his and his government's resistance to accepting those in need coming here from abroad. It's what the people want, apparently.
I'm an immigrant. I came here from Uganda under the old regime of Idi Amin. I didn't have a choice. Guess what? People have a choice now. We have a choice to make. We make a positive contribution to this world and to this country. And, I employ people. We have a successful life. I'm sitting here talking to you on LBC. I mean, that's something, isn't it?
What is, I suppose, what's been highlighted is that what is happening at the moment is countries coming together with a common purpose is the sort of opposite of what has been happening in this country over the last 5 years or so, where we've been dissociating ourselves from the rest of the world.
Well, Nick, that's the whole point. Brexit has a devastating effect. Now we are out on our own, and Putin has looked on that and seized upon it. And he's looked at it and says, England is nothing.
People say with some justification, I think, that Vladimir Putin is in some way partly to blame for Brexit. If he did not have a hand in it personally, then it couldn't have gone better for him, really, because we've spent the last 5 years fighting amongst ourselves rather than looking outwards. The same in America. I'm not the first person to say that it looks like that Putin's fingerprints are all over the election of Donald Trump in America and the decision to leave the European Union here. It seems that Western nations have been busy sort of prosecuting wars within their own border rather than looking to the greater danger outside. Thanks, Manesh. 0345 6060 973. Chris says the West could set up refugee corridors into NATO member countries, which will be flown over by NATO aircraft, and the West could try dialogue with the generals on the ground and, believe it or not, offer amnesty and shelter to Russian soldiers wishing to disarm. Worth a try, says Chris. 0345 6060 973. Yorkshire. Hello, Mike.
Hi, Nick. Yeah. Your 2 minutes just before the 11:30 news, I think, were some of the most relevant things that have been said tonight. When you talked about the displays of protest in Russia and the prominent Russian people coming out against Putin, because in the end, internal corrosion is what is absolutely devastating, and he can't do much about it, because the more he attacks those people, the more it brings into focus what they're saying. So if you get people condemning him, well-known people, and he attacks them, people think, whoa, hang on a minute, Why has he attacked them? And I think that what you've said will actually be more damaging to Putin than anything else that's been said about missiles and tanks and sanctions. That's what will really get him, is the internal corrosion of it.
Yeah, I'm sure that the threats and the actions from outside countries will have a sort of give him and the Russian people perhaps who believe in the propaganda, a sort of bunker mentality. They'll group together in order to repel this sort of attack from outside. It's the attack from within that might be the thing that actually does him in.
I think so. And the other thing that I really rang in about was that Biden and Johnson for days were jumping up and down about their intelligence, and that they knew that he was going to attack. They knew he was going to do false flag stuff. They knew that Putin was going to accuse Ukraine of abusing ethnic Russians and all the rest of it. Absolutely full of it. But since he actually moved in, we've had total silence. Now, what would be really interesting to know would be what's their intelligence of what his endgame is. What is Putin going to do? Because militarily, he can do what he wants in Ukraine. We can't stop it, and the Ukraine people are not strong enough militarily to prevent it. So where's all this intelligence? Is he going to go to the Dnieper River? Is he going to put a little salient around Kiev? Is he going to leave the rest of what was described by Admiral Chris Parry as the rump of Ukraine to manage itself? Where's all this intelligence now? Where's he going to stop? What's the end game? Because that's particularly important on how the West reacts next.
Well, one of the things that I've heard most about that is that people just don't know what either he wants or where he's going and how much will satisfy him and what his actual plan is. Maybe that's true. Maybe if they did know more, they were not likely to tell us at this point because, by definition, that's part of the Secret Service.
But they were full of telling us all about their intelligence before that. But on the other part, another point was people are going on, he'll go on to Poland, he'll go on to the Baltic states. That's complete rubbish, because at the end of the day, if he amassed 100,000 troops near Romania, NATO would match him up man for man. And unfortunately, Ukraine weren't in NATO, so we couldn't do it. But there's no way that he can actually just move on somewhere else, because if he attacks in the Baltic, we can attack him through Romania or through Turkey. He would have three fronts to deal with. That just is not a feasible proposition. And if you think a little bit broader on this one, if Putin told his military to attack when it was absolutely not guaranteed of success, the military know that what happens in Russia, if you get general staff ordered to complete a campaign and it fails, they're dead men. So if Putin ordered the military to do something that they knew couldn't be successful, they'd take Putin out, because they'd be dead men anyway. So I don't think that this idea that he will go on to attack NATO and try and push the Iron Curtain back is in any way feasible. It's just not pragmatic.
Well, he doesn't have unlimited resources, and it would seem to be something to stretch even the forces that Russia has at its hand to occupy Ukraine, which is a massive country, and then to move on to other countries and defeat those too. It does seem like a bit of an ask, which is probably why he implicitly threatened nuclear warfare if anybody from the outside stood up to him. Thanks, Mike. 0345 6060 973. Chris says the West could... Oh, no, read that. Jim says, I don't think we should continue supporting the Ukrainian government and forces, but I think we should be trying to foment unrest in Belarus. Lukashenko is hated by the majority of Belarusians, and this would cause Putin a major problem. Just a thought, says Jim. More war. 0345 6060 973. Bexley. Hello, John.
Hello, Nick. I'm just wondering, one question. With all this money the Russians are taking off of their people, the oligarchs and Putin and that, and all the profit they got, like in London or other parts of the world. Why can't we get the Ukrainians over here to live in their houses or sell all their property to give the money to supplement them coming over to these countries?
What I've heard, which seems quite extraordinary, really, given the circumstances, is that the government is constrained somewhat by the possibility of legal action if they take assets from certain individuals that have connections to the Russian regime. And I think that one of the reasons that they're saying that is that because people all over the world, the international criminal super rich, come to Great Britain because our legal system is one of the best for them. It protects them against us poor dopes who pay taxes. That's the way it's set up here. Everything has been set up in favour of those with the most money, not necessarily those who happen to be in the right.
Okay, I just thought there was some sort of because if you're a foreign person and you live in Italy or Spain or that, and they can take your houses without, and the government can take your houses without even letting you know. And I wonder why it couldn't be done in England as well as these other countries. Like, it seems to me when people go to live in Italy, Spain, or like that, since we joined the European Union, they've had some of their houses, they can't buy houses, or they've had them taken away from them.
Yeah, that's why they prefer to come to London, is because the system is set up specifically for their benefit. That's why the worst people in the world come to London to go through a divorce. That's why the worst people in the world come to London to wash the money that they've stolen from the people at home. That's why London is called Londonistan and Londongrad. That's why many people say that this country is actually, by the amount of money that flows through it, the most crooked country on earth, which is actually pretty shameful. We pretend that we're not because we dress our bankers and lawyers and estate agents and so on, dress in nice suits and speak politely. So we like to kid ourselves that that's not us, but the rest of the world sees our system for what it is. Bent. 0345 6060 973. Nick Abbot, LBC.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Nick Abbot.
It's 3 minutes past midnight. This is Nick Abbot on LBC. For the next hour, I'm taking your calls and messages on the Ukraine conflict. Earlier this evening, as you've just been hearing, the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, announced fresh financial sanctions against Russia.
I will now propose to EU leaders the following measures. First, we commit to ensuring that a certain number of Russian banks are removed from SWIFT. This will ensure that these banks are disconnected from the international financial system and harm their ability to operate globally. SWIFT is the world's dominant global interbank payment system. Cutting banks off will stop them from conducting most of their financial transactions worldwide and effectively block Russian exports and imports. Second, we will stop Putin from using his war chest. We will paralyze the assets of Russia's central bank. This will freeze its transactions, and it made it impossible for the central bank to liquidate assets. And finally, we will work to prohibit Russian oligarchs from using their financial assets on our markets. All of these measures will significantly harm Putin's ability to finance his war. And they will have an severely eroding impact on his economy. Putin embarked on a path aiming to destroy Ukraine. But what he's also doing, in fact, is destroying the future of his own country.
That was the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, reacting to the news on this programme, LBC's Washington correspondent Simon Marks.
They have now agreed to remove some Russian banks from the SWIFT interbank system. We've talked about this before. SWIFT is the big international payments messaging system that allows members of SWIFT, financial institutions all over the world, to send money to and from one another. This statement says that selected Russian banks are being removed from the SWIFT messaging system. I think there will be lots of questions about what that word selected means and why this is not applying to all Russian banks. They're also taking actions, they say, to prevent the Russian central bank, Russia's equivalent of the Bank of England, from deploying its international reserves to undermine the impact of the sanctions that have already been unveiled. They say that they are going after an additional group of individuals and entities who are facilitating the war in Ukraine and the harmful actions of the Russian government. They are limiting, and indeed the Germans have already announced tonight they are ending the sale of those so-called golden passports that have allowed so many Russian oligarchs to buy their way into citizenship in the UK and many other countries around the world.
That was LBC's Washington correspondent Simon Marks. Also speaking earlier this evening, the Prime Minister Boris Johnson.
I think we have to face the hideous reality that the diplomacy, as far as President Putin was concerned, was a charade. He never really intended to alter his course. You read the article that he wrote many months ago. It was clear that he's attached to a weird, semi-mystical view of Ukraine as part of Russia. And that is a view that the Ukrainian people fervently, passionately reject. And they're showing that they will fight to reject it. Our job now is to help them, to help change the very heavy odds that they face. And that's why we're sending the support that we are.
That was Boris Johnson speaking from RAF Bryce Norton. So what do we need to do now in the West? Will these sanctions be enough? Other countries have, of course, been sanctioned in the past, North Korea, Iran, Syria, and so on, and it has not precipitated a regime change. In fact, actually quite the reverse. So is it enough? Should we be doing more? 0345 6060 973. What would you do if you were a leader of a Western country? Or indeed this one specifically. Edinburgh. Hello, Al.
Hi. When you watch the news, you see, people with such dignity and bravery. But they all, one of the questions that comes up is, where are your planes? And I think, well, how would we feel if Kiev falls, and we could have prevented that? So I just think we should give air support.
Well, the thing that people say in relation to that is that if you give air support, then almost certainly you will start having you'll have like air battles.
Yes. And
then that's us at war with Russia.
Well, we kind of are already. And I think there's a chance it'll happen anyway. It'll escalate anyway. I think it's probably better to preempt it and to minimize it, really. But I think it's really important, in my view. I'm not an expert, but I think it'd be really important to protect Kiev.
Yeah, I suppose that, in some ways we are actually at war with them, and the sort of actions that we're taking to hobble the Russian economy might be seen in Russia as acts of war in themselves.
Yeah, I think it's just better to be overt about it. I'm not saying that anything being done now is bad. But quite the opposite. But I think it's just time to be a bit more overt about it. And we did sign the Budapest Agreement, and of all the parties that signed that, Ukraine, UK, USA, Russia, the only party to have observed that agreement is actually Ukraine.
Yeah, the Budapest Agreement was. I don't know if it's my reading of it that's incorrect, but I don't think it meant that we would come to the protection of Ukraine I just think it was an agreement that we wouldn't use force against them.
I think it was more an implication. I mean, whether or not the legality is clear, I don't know. But I think the principle of it was to assure their security. And so, given that that's the spirit of the agreement, I think that's, I think it's a bit tenuous for NATO to kind of hide behind the, if you're not a NATO member, we're not going to help you. I think
but that is the nature of the
agreement.
But that is the nature of the organisation, though, isn't it? If you're a NATO member, then you contribute to the group by spending on the military. You can't. It's like us with the European Union. We can't leave the European Union and then expect to have all the benefits of being in the European Union. You can't have your cake and eat it, in Boris Johnson's famous phrase.
Yeah, but you have exceptional circumstances. And I think this is pretty exceptional.
It certainly is. Thanks for that, Al. 0345 6060 973. So he was referring to that Budapest memorandum. It was the US, Russia and Britain which committed to respect the independence and the sovereignty of the existing borders of Ukraine. Now, of course, Russia has gone back on that, obviously. And the purpose of it was to persuade Ukraine to give up their nuclear arsenal, which they had built up by being part of the USSR. It was the third largest nuclear arsenal in the world, something of almost 2,000 nuclear warheads. So that was the idea. You give up your nukes and we promise not to use force against you. What it didn't say, as far as I'm aware, correct me if I'm wrong, was that we would agree to protect you from others using force against you. And I know that might sound like a little bit of a cop-out, but I think that was the agreement. 0345 6060 973. Jake texts, China and India both abstained in the vote in the UN. Definitely a problem for Putin. It's interesting that people were wondering what China was going to do, and this was the vote in the UN that condemned Russia's actions, and I think there were 3 countries that abstained. Russia, of course, voted against the adoption of that proposal. Of course they did. But people were wondering what China was going to do, and China's playing a sort of cagey game here because they don't want, while they are sort of in consort with Russia to a certain extent, they don't want to annoy the West too much because that's where they sell all their stuff. 0345 6060 973, text 84850. Email nica@lbc.co.uk, and if you're on Twitter, it's @LBC.
Nick Abbott on LBC.
Let's talk to a chap in Kensington. Hello, Ziggy.
Good evening. How are you?
Yes, Ziggy. Very well, thanks. I know you've been waiting a very long time. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Don't worry about it. I wanted to call up because of that guy. I think he was from Stevenage, talking about putting up the white flag and surrendering it, be peaceful.
Oh, yes.
I mean, quite frankly, that's completely untrue. I mean, the videos coming from social media are completely, disgusting, quite frankly. Russian missiles have been fired at an apartment block in Kyiv. We've seen, a Russian tank running over a poor man in his car, driving down the road. And if that is called peaceful surrender, then, we don't know the meaning of peaceful. And I mean, look at President Zelensky, someone from such a country, you wouldn't think that the power and the importance, he's such a strong president. Look at him. He's there. He's saying, I'm fighting to the last man. People have offered him tickets out of there. And he said, I'm staying with my people. To do that, I'm completely all the way with him. I have a friend, Daniel. His family is from Ukraine. He has family in the West. His older cousin is stuck in Kyiv. And to see such a friend hurting and his family hurting, it's devastating. For someone to say that the Russians are there for peaceful surrender, they're there to strip the Ukrainians of their freedom, of why they left the Soviet Union. The Russians accuse it, saying that we're coming for President Zelensky and then his family. Is that peaceful to you? Because it's definitely not peaceful to me.
No, I think you'd have to be completely deluded to think that the Russians were interested in who were entering Ukraine in search of peace.
Yeah, Totally. I think what we're doing quite now, I wasn't, to be completely honest with you, to be completely honest with the viewers, and my friends will know, Boris Johnson wasn't in my good books after what's been happening. But what he laid out in Parliament a few days ago, and all the House agreeing with him in these sanctions, I think we're making progress as much as we can. We need to completely isolate the Putin regime and Russia. Despite the majority of Russian people not wanting it, we need to isolate them completely. We're seeing the league doing, we're seeing Formula One doing. We need to do it politically, democratically, until Putin realizes and stop believing his own lies that it's just Russia. We just need Russia. We want Ukraine. We want to, strengthen Russia. It's not like that. We need to completely isolate him until it's just Russia by themselves. And then they think, hold on a minute, where are we getting this money from? Where are we putting our money in these banks? Where are we selling our gas to? And eventually, it's not going to be the powerful Russia that we've seen, the most powerful country on the planet, yet they can't even take a country that's 3-4 times smaller than theirs.
Yeah, I think that people have been making fun of the proposals or the moves to ban Russia from the Eurovision Song Contest. I mean, it sounds silly, and to take F1 away from them, and teams refusing to play Russia at football, and taking the Champions League away from them, and it all seems so superficial. But I think that these messages will get through to the Russian people, and it will get through the propaganda, because if you show up to a football stadium and the game is off, then that's a message that will be quite clear, and it will be the opposite of what they're probably hearing on Russian television. So,
exactly, I couldn't agree more. Yeah. And think of we'll take Sochi for example, the Formula One Grand Prix. I'm a lover of Formula One. Come to think of it, the amount of money people will pay for tickets, flights, hotels over to Russia to watch, Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen battle it out. They're not going to get that money. That money is not going to go to the Russian economy. It's not going to go to Moscow's tourism. It's not going to go to, Aeroflot, for example. They're going to really, we saw the stocks. They lost 240 billion within less than 24 hours. Honestly, Putin, the propaganda is unbelievable. It really is.
I think that we have to really hope that the Russian people, it really becomes focused to them what has actually happened in their own country, because the wealth of the Russian people appears from outside has been stolen from them, and in in large amounts has been brought to London, where where oligarchs swan around as though they own the place, because in great amount they actually do.
Yeah, quite. I think it was. I think it was the first day of the major invasion, and I think.
Oh, he just hung up on himself. Thanks for that, Ziggy. Better luck next time. 0345 6060 973. You can text 84850. Email nick@lbc.co.uk. Just one question to my producer. Have I taken a break yet? He's thinking about it. No? We're unsure. Let's take a call while we try and figure out precisely what it is, one way or the other. Brighton. Hello, James. James. Too late. How about Newcastle? Jack.
Yeah, hi.
Jack.
Yeah?
Yes, Jack.
Yes, hi. I want to say that I don't think all these sanctions the Europeans are doing right now, it won't work as long as we buy the oil.
Yeah, we are in a weird position, aren't we? Because we seem to be at some sort of state of war with Russia, but at the same time, we are still buying their number one export.
Yeah, it won't. Most of the economy of Russia, if you check it out, is basically the oil.
Yeah, oil and gas. I think gas is even more important to them. But
yeah, too. Gas is even more important. And that's why they can't block all the banks. That's why they only set selected banks they take out of SWIFT.
Mm.
So basically, the Western, we're not dealing well with it.
Also, it's rather ironic that this situation that Putin has devised is actually they're actually profiting from, because the price of oil and gas has gone through the roof. So they're making even more money from their major exports.
Yeah, and a lot of if we block, let's say all the banks are blocked, all the banks get blocked.
Calm moment,
Okay. 0345 6060 973. John says it's not nuclear, it's chemical weapons. Putin's an expert and has enough rockets to burst them over many countries without anyone knowing straight away what the consequences would be. Martin says the last thing the UK needs is Boris Johnson making an idiotic decision to go to war with Russia. Let's face it, he wants his day, just like Putin, two dangerous people. I'm not sure we're in much danger of Boris Johnson declaring war on Russia, but stranger things have happened, I suppose. Shepherd's Bush. Hello, Luke.
Hi. Evening.
Luke.
I was listening to your last call, actually, about the Russian Grand Prix. I mean, I don't follow it, but by the time that comes and goes, there'll be nothing left of Ukraine. I just think maybe that the UK, instead of just watching this unfold and we're going to be really embarrassed and really regret this. I think if we don't do something, and I think we should go separately away from NATO and, stick up for Ukraine. The sanctions are going to take 6 to 8 months to work. So I think really we've got to do something about it.
Well, yes, but the thing that would give you pause for thought, though, is that we appear to be against a man who's not totally with it. He seems to be somewhat borderline nuts.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, we can't, be afraid. More than say Russians should be afraid of nuclear. I mean, we have to, I think, try and do what's right. Regardless of the consequences, really. And if we do that, then we end up with a planet that is, free, or a planet that doesn't exist. Maybe, but I still think we can't watch those people suffering like that. I mean, if that was us, we'd be screaming for help. So, I think we've got to try and do something. And maybe even if we do something alone without America and without the rest of NATO, maybe you won't use nuclear weapons. I just think we can't just stand by and watch this happen. Personally.
Okay, thanks, Luke. 0345 6060 973. Louise says, tell Putin Ukraine will never join NATO, but if Russia ever steps foot in Ukraine, NATO will come in hard and fast. Putin has 2 days to withdraw troops or we're all coming in. Tell Putin Ukraine will never join NATO, but if Russia ever steps foot in Ukraine, NATO will come in hard and fast. Right, so we would have to tell him to get out first, and that's not going to happen. Millie texts, I'm ashamed of NATO, all standing around looking through the window at the playground bully. I'm the daughter of a Royal Marine who was shot and wounded in one of Britain's small wars in 1962 in Borneo, rescuing hostages. I'm sure my dad is turning in his grave, and don't get me started on Trump, says Millie. There's a couple of videos that really hit home to me today, and I urge you to watch both of them. One was Vladimir Zelensky's video message to the people of Russia. It's about 8 minutes long, and he's speaking in Russia, but there's the translation that you'll see on YouTube. Really emotional. Just such a great speech, and he seems to be a very impressive leader. He used to be a television comedian. That's one thing that you should take time to watch. There's been a few of his videos, but it's the one where he's just speaking in what looks like a studio or a room of some sort, directly to the camera. There's also ones outside saying, I'm still here, I'm not going anywhere, and so on. But it's the message to the Russian people. It's very, very good. And the opposite of that was this... the Republicans in America are having a meeting in Florida at the moment, Orlando, I think, and they're having a CPAC meeting, but alongside it, they're having what's called an AFPAC, which is America First. And there's a chap on stage who is saying, what America has that other countries can only dream of is our young white men. and we should stand with Russia. And the crowd start chanting Putin's name. Now, this is a sort of a side meeting of a big Republican convention in Florida, where the crowd is whooping and cheering in support of Vladimir Putin and what he's doing over there. We've come to a really strange place in the West. And I think that, in large part, Vladimir Putin's got his fingerprints all over it. I mean, the Russia report was ignored, still is, by our government. And the intelligence services in this country said that Vladimir Putin had his fingerprints perhaps all over the European referendum, and that the government, its repeated refrain that we did not find any evidence of Russian interference was specifically because they did not look for it, for fear of what they would find. Now, the assumption that comes from that is that they knew that it was going on, but as long as you don't look for it, you won't find it. If Vladimir Putin did not have his fingerprints all over the EU referendum, and he didn't have some input into electing Donald Trump, and the consequences of those two events, the fighting within the borders of this country and America, if Putin didn't have anything to do with it, then it could not possibly have gone any better for him. So the assumption has to be that he, in some small or large part, was actually responsible for both of those things. He's been playing us. 0345 6060 973. It's 12:30. The news headlines on LBC with Zora Sullivan.
LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Yes, 0345 6060 973. Paul texts, to be fair to Trump, I do think he had a point that the reliance on Russia for fossil fuels simply gave Putin more power. This is the argument that we should be more self-sufficient and look at phasing in renewable energy. Well, I thought we were doing that. He says, as for Trump's diplomatic skills, some might say a narcissist gets on with a narcissist. Well, they got along just fine. Because Donald Trump only has two speeds. He has a sort of fawning genuflection to dictators and those that compliment him, and a sort of snarling childish aggression to those that don't. And Putin is of the first category, the former. He loves him. Belfast. Hello, Mark. Mark.
Nick, how are you doing? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Nick, do you know, it's absolutely breaking my heart to listen to how many people in the West are prepared to fight to the last drop of Ukrainian blood. It's just, I'm sitting here listening how nasty. The West are not getting involved in this fight. We're all sitting in our nice warm homes telling the Ukrainians to fight and fight. This war hasn't even begun. And I just think that we don't have tanks sitting outside our homes or aircraft flying over our homes. And just have a wee bit of thought. It's the innocent Ukrainian people who are going to pay for this. And, you know, we're sitting here egging them on, pushing them on. The Russian army, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
The Russian army, from what I can tell after listening, this war hasn't even begun, unfortunately. What I see is going to happen just quickly is within a week or two, and it is Kiev. It's not Kyiv. It's Kiev. Once it's around Kiev, they will give the President Zelensky the chance to get out. And I pray, for the sake of the Ukrainian people, that he leaves. Now, I understand that a lot of people will say, in the West will say, no, he should stay and he should martyr himself. He should make the war worse. Get into a helicopter, get across the border, get this war over, save as many of your people as you can, I know there's people sitting in the West with their popcorn, ready to push you on and fight to the last drop of your sons and daughters' blood. Please, President Zelensky, get in a helicopter and get out. End this war. End it now. The Russians are probing. They are not fighting. When they probe and they find out exactly where the Ukrainians are, they will move in and they will be ruthless. They will murder and they will murder. The West will sit back, do nothing, but encourage the Ukrainians to fight a First World Army. Please have a bit of respect, have a bit of thought for the Ukrainian people. You don't have a tank burned down on your home. And these people sitting in the West, I can't believe. And David Lammy earlier on says, we will win, we will beat Putin. David Lammy is not fighting in the war. As far as I know, he's not signed up to fight in this war. He's in his warm house in London, shouting and encouraging people to lose their lives.
But you seem to be saying that the Ukrainians should just give up and not fight.
What I'm saying, if it had been different, if the West had have taken the opportunity to help them, then I would say they would stand a chance. They do not stand a chance. Please do not listen to the West. Do not listen to these people who come on night after night and encourage you.
Well, the Ukrainians aren't protecting their own homeland because the West is urging them on. They're doing it because they feel so strongly that nothing else is a possibility for them. And what did you mean? What did you mean when you said it's Kiev, not Kyiv?
You see, the thing about it is, the West, we have always called it Kiev. 3 or 4 weeks ago, the right wing...
To be clear, that's the Russian pronunciation, right?
But we have always called it that. We don't call it Paris. Yeah. We don't call it Moscow. We have always called it Kiev. That's not political. That's what the West called it.
No, but it is political now because the Ukrainians pronounce it Kyiv, right?
No, because Fox News a few weeks ago gave out a statement saying that they're going to take political sides and it's not Kiev, that it's Kyiv. The Daily Mail,
Fox News,
the right-wing Trump-led Fox News, said that it's called Kyiv. Call it Kyiv if you want to support the people in Ukraine. I support the people in Ukraine. I don't want journalists who I'm listening to. When I hear a journalist saying Kyiv, I know what side they're on. And I just don't know if I'm getting the proper information from them. Because from the get-go,
wait a minute, back up. So you think that by pronouncing it in the way that Ukrainians do, then you're siding with the Russians? That doesn't make any sense.
No. That's not what I'm saying. The West has always called it Kiev.
Yeah, but the West calls it Paris, but don't make it.
No, you're misunderstanding me, Nick. We don't call it Paris. The presidents call it Paris.
Right.
We don't call it Moscow. The Americans call it Moscow. We call it Moscow. The Ukrainians call it Kyiv.
Yeah.
The West, we in the West and the United Kingdom and America call it Kiev. You see now, any journalist comes onto your TV screen and calls it Kyiv. They're taking their lead from Fox News.
No, they're not. They're taking their lead from how the Ukrainians pronounce their own capital city.
The Ukrainians have called their capital city Kyiv.
Yes.
For the last hundreds of years. When have we ever called it Kyiv?
What's that got to do with it? So we've been getting it wrong all this time. You're making absolutely no sense at all. But we're going around in a tight circle there, Mark, and I don't think we're going to get anywhere. If people are calling it Kyiv now, in recognition of how the Ukrainians pronounce their own capital city's name. If you say Kiev, I mean, that just might be by force of habit, but it also might be a political decision to imply that it belongs to Russia. 0345 6060 973. Kath says, if Russian troops take western Ukraine near Poland, a NATO member, we will be at war. Sue says, can we please help children here who will be worried beyond belief? They are living through situations that have no solution right now. They are so important and we must support them. I'm scared. They must be terrified. Put them first. Put our children first. 0345 6060 973. Kingston upon Thames. Hello, Ken. Oh, Ken. Too late. India. Arindam.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Go
I
ahead.
think I'm going to take a slightly different path here. I'm really going to go to the United Nations Security Council thing, where China, India, and UAE abstained.
Abstained, yeah.
In my mind, abstain means, and I heard this from one of your guys yesterday. I think the gentleman was from St. Andrews University, who said abstaining really means I've seen a crime, I've seen an accident, and I walked away. And I am ashamed that my country did that. Completely ashamed that my country did that. We have parts of our country that China claims, Arunachal Pradesh. So if China comes into Arunachal Pradesh, I'm just wondering what we would do, what the world would do, how the world would react to us.
Yeah, I mean, China does tend to abstain a lot. I think what the West was waiting for was to see whether they were going to veto the resolution. This was a resolution denouncing the Russian invasion of Ukraine. China, India, and the UAE abstained from the vote, and the West took that, particularly with China, as something of a win.
Yeah, Nick, I don't think that was a win. That was major countries, especially China and India, just staying away. Oh, we don't want to get into this.
I think maybe it also might be that China doesn't want to veto, it wants to sit on the fence because, of course, it has designs on places
Taiwan.
that might also cause the UN to introduce a resolution denouncing it for that. So it doesn't want to. It doesn't want to go along with the resolution to denounce Russia, and it doesn't want to veto it, perhaps because it wants to keep some relationship with the West. So maybe an abstention was all that it was left for them.
Oh yes. What about my country, India?
Well, you tell me.
Why did we have to abstain?
Well, why do you think?
Why did we have to abstain?
Why do you think?
I think because we don't have any balls. That's it. All I think of now is that China has claimed one state in the northeast corner of our country, and they will possibly just march in there. There's a land border there. And then, of course, there's Taiwan.
Yes, I guess that's a possibility.
It's not a possibility. I think it's a certainty.
You do leave big gaps, so I'm going to jump into that one. All right, thanks, Arindam. 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Email nica@lbc.co.uk. If you're on Twitter, it's @LBC. This is LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC with Nick Abbott.
0345 6060 973. Nathan texts, if an invading army was advancing on London, would Johnson stay behind to defend it like Zelensky? No. He'd be on the first private helicopter to the nearest airport with a private jet, and he'd be out of here so fast he'd leave the pilot behind. Kingston upon Thames. Hello, Ken.
Hi, Nick. First time caller to your show.
Welcome along.
I've thought of something that might, be a bit useful. And none of the powers that be have really indicated that we must deal with Putin now, or we're going to have to deal with him in the future. Because if anybody thinks that Putin is going to stop at where he is at the moment, he is not. He'll go straight the way through. He'll see how the West is so wishy-washy and not really doing anything, or at least not doing very much, and that will embolden him, and he'll go right to the other side of the world, and he'll take as many Baltic countries as he likes, because I don't think anybody is going to stop him, especially NATO, when they just turn around and say, oh no, we won't come into your... I mean, if everybody in NATO, plus the few satellite states, got together and whacked this guy big time, I don't think he would use nuclear weapons, because we've got France, us, America, and God knows who else have also got nuclear weapons. I don't think he's a pretty savvy geezer. I don't think he'll be stupid enough to start a world war. Whilst he's got the threat of the world war, of nuclear, he can do what he likes. I don't think he's going to stop it.
Well, quite possibly, but one of the things that's actually going to restrict his ability to do that, though, is that he has limited resources, which are becoming more limited by the day with these sanctions. And charging into a country is one thing, but occupying it is something else entirely, and it takes an enormous amount of resources and money. The amount of that he has of both of those things is dwindling by the day, but then to occupy one country and then go into another one. I mean, I am no expert at all, but it does seem like a bit of an ask.
Well, I think you've got a very good point, but the point that I'm trying to make is that I just don't think he will stop. He'll be on a roll, and he'll just... One of your chaps was saying that at the moment it's only a testing situation. He's feeling his way. He hasn't unleashed his dogs of war yet. But once he does, then they'll sweep right the way through, I reckon. I pray and hope I'm totally, completely wrong. Utterly wrong. But I don't trust that guy as far as I could throw him.
I think you might be right about the nuclear thing, though, because... he is by many accounts the richest man in the world, and he likes his money, and he likes his luxury, and he likes his big houses and all of the rest of it. And there's not much point in having all of that if what you're looking at is smoking irradiated ruin.
Exactly. Couldn't agree more with that.
All right, thanks a lot, Ken. I'm going to leave it there because time's running out, but thanks, Ken. 0345 6060 973. Nottingham, Alex.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for taking my call. Having lived and worked in Ukraine for 30 years, I was completely thrown off by that fellow from Belfast and his semiotics about Kiev and Kiev. I mean, it's do we show Peking respect by Beijing respect, the Chinese respect by calling their capital Peking still? I don't know. Anyway, that's not the point I'm calling in for. I'm convinced that going to sports or relating to sports, I'm convinced that Russia should be banned from hosting any international competitions and participating in any competitions right up until Putin's in power. In other words, a complete and utter ban on all participation, including individual participation, tennis players, the lot. And then the other point I'd like to make is about the memorandum, Budapest memorandum, because I was doing some consulting work for the Ukrainian parliamentary group on nuclear disarmament at that time. And if you just give me a minute, I'll explain that this was a hodgepodge agreement put together to pressure Ukraine into getting rid of its nuclear weapons. The Ukrainians wanted to give up their nuclear weapons. They wanted to either have facilities constructed on their territory to dispose of the fissile material or to ship it to the U.S. The U.S. Congress agreed on that, but Clinton, being a good pal of the Russians, was convinced by Yeltsin that Yeltsin and Russia will have peaceful intentions towards Russia, so it's easier and cheaper to ship Ukraine's nuclear warheads to Russia. And that's how we got where we are, because the memorandum language talks about reassurances and respect, and you're quite right. There's no mechanism built in there that means that any of the signatories have any responsibilities or committed to take any action if any of the other signatories violates the treaty. In other words, there are no horizontal disincentives. However, at the same time, don't be fooled by the fact it's called the memorandum. It was signed by presidents and prime ministers. It's a fully fledged but a messy document. It was done as an expedient, and talking to some of the American chief negotiators last year, they said that it was something that they hoped at the time. They were trying to sweep this issue under the carpet, and it was something that they would never have to return to. Now, just one more point relating to this. In a way, it's a shame that the Ukrainians never invoked Article 3 of the Budapest Memorandum, because there it talks that they have the right to convene a meeting of all the signatories if they feel economic or political pressure from Russia, not just from any of the signatories. Not just military pressure. Russia has waged countless political campaigns to destabilize Ukraine and also economic wars against Ukraine, but Ukraine never actually convened a meeting of the signatories of the Budapest Memorandum, and hence didn't test whether that agreement had any teeth. Now, we can argue why they didn't, but one of the reasons is because many of the mid-level bureaucrats responsible for imposing or carrying out a Ukrainian foreign policy were actually fifth columnists representing the Kremlin, very often Russian citizens violating Ukrainian law, which says you cannot have dual citizenships. It's a very complex part of the world. So when people say that Britain shouldn't get involved, people shouldn't get involved in this distant war or whatever, the UK did take on a legal responsibility at the highest level, signed by John Major, to give assurances to protect Ukraine when it gave up its nuclear weapons. And remember, this is a keystone document as far as the preserving the nuclear or non-proliferation regime, one of the key goals for all of the major powers in the world.
Can I just second? Can I just ask you about what you just said? We made a commitment to protect them. Is that right? I thought we made a commitment not to use force against them.
You made a commitment. The UK made a commitment to respect Ukraine's sovereignty and assurances of their independence and sovereignty, but no guarantees. Right. Now, that's the argument. What's the difference between assurances and guarantees? That's where the supporters argue that an assurance is the same as a guarantee. Yeah. Those who take the other interpretation don't want to get involved and say no, reassurance is nowhere like a guarantee.
Right. So it's one of those legal. It's a loophole actually.
Absolutely.
It's a get out.
I just repeat what I said. This was done rapidly. It was done quickly under Russian pressure, and because Ukraine was actually threatened to become a pariah state when it needed Western assistance. Yeah. Ukraine was forced to swallow this agreement in large part. Otherwise, it would have gone the way of North Korea if it would have tried to even bargain, reach a better bargain for itself. Yeah. And of course, it couldn't break through the chummy agreement between Yeltsin and Clinton. We all remember those photos of how they were best buddies, smiling, laughing away, and everybody believed that. There would be no recrudescence of Russian imperialism, that Russia was on the way to kind of democracy.
It did seem like like a new dawn, like a positive move that America and Russia were talking to each other, and the USSR was disintegrating. It seemed like a good thing, not necessarily anymore. All right, that was very interesting. Thanks, Alex. I'm going to be back tonight at 10 o'clock. Ian Payne is here from 4, but first it's Clyde Bull.
Thanks very much indeed. And coming up, we continue our coverage of the war in Ukraine as the battle for Kiev continues. We're expecting more developments overnight, so we will be elements 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 overnight, so we will be